just to make a note that the board is now returning from a recess. The Board of Education was called to order. Our meeting was called to order at 4:30 today, and we immediately moved to an executive session. And we moved to executive session with the specific purpose to discuss the evaluation of the superintendent. And we did that just because we had all the board members present prior to the board meeting. At the conclusion of that, we reconvened to public session. There was no action taken, and then the board immediately moved to recess, and some board members were able to go grab a bite to eat, if you will, before the 7 o'clock meeting. So we are now at 7 o'clock returning from that recess, and I would like to ask Mr. Aho to call the roll so that we have record.
Mr. Stuver?
Here.
Mr. Felber?
Here.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Turl Waldron?
Here.
Mrs. Kane Criswell is absent.
She is stuck on a plane on a runway somewhere. She was trying to get here tonight, but airlines are not cooperating. If we can, I would like to ask everyone who's here tonight to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have one item to modify in our agenda this evening. I would like to make a motion that under Exhibit J1, we will remove the consideration for the contract for our treasurer, Mr. Aho. Is there a second for this motion to remove that item from Exhibit J1?
Second.
Second by Ms. Turl Waldron. The purpose for this is that we had some very last-minute changes, and also with the absence of Ms. Kate Kane Criswell, I thought it appropriate that we postpone this action until next Wednesday, where we be meeting in a special session to do the annual performance evaluation for the treasurer, Mr. Aho, and we will simply finish that evaluation, which is an executive session topic, move back into an open public session, and then we will take consideration for action on Mr. Aho's contract at that time. Is there any other comments about moving this off the agenda tonight and on to next Wednesday's agenda? Roll call, please.
Mr. Stuver?
Yes.
Mrs. Turl Waldron?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 4-0. Under communications tonight for the President's report, I do have some remarks. Summertime, so I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and hope that our staff and students and families are in fact enjoying this great summer break. Despite a rainy start to our summer season, the district has still been very active with outside projects and activities, and I'd like to highlight just a few things that are going on in the district this summer. Back in early June, the Relay for Life event was hosted at Twinsburg Tiger Stadium. I know that's an event that's near and dear to Mr. Felber's heart. We also recently had the Cost of Freedom event, which occurred last weekend at the Twinsburg High School, and was an activity that's been planned for several years and was sponsored by the local VFW with cooperation from the city of Twinsburg, the Twinsburg School District, along with support from many other organizations and businesses. And just on behalf of the board and the district, I would like to say thank you to the VFW and to the many volunteers who participated to make this extraordinary event possible. Approaching in early August, we have Twins Days Festival coming up, which is organized by the Twins Days Committee and includes support from the city, school district, and many other organizations and businesses. Obviously, this is an event that takes place on the school grounds, so I know that our team has been very busy preparing the facilities for that event as well. Also happening this summer, a lot of projects. The stadium turf project has been completed up at the stadium. The field looks great, and it's already being used by our sports teams. And we've had various parking lot, driveway, and other sideway projects that are underway. And one thing that I'd like to mention in the President's report, just as a kudo, last night we sat in our Buildings and Grounds Committee, and I know, Kathy, I'll let you give some other highlights, but one thing that I really was impressed with was we had a very, very good state inspection on our bus fleet. And I just want to make a shout out or give kudos to the mechanics and to Mr. Welker and that entire team that keeps our transportation department moving. I think there was one bus with one tiny flaw that was easily fixed. But unlike some other inspections where we found buses that were not able to roll out and transport our kids and we had to scramble, This was a very, very good bus inspection, so I just want to call attention to that and say thank you, Mr. Welker, and thank you to the team down at the bus garage and to all the folks that keep the wheels turning. There are many, many more summer projects underway, and it's, appropriate to mention that many of the maintenance and improvement projects are funded through the Permanent Improvement Funds, which is supported by our local community. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the board to the local taxpayers who are providing the resources that allow this district to maintain our facilities. And again, also to Mr. Welker, who assesses and prioritizes and directs all of the completion of all of these many, many projects. Different topic. Since our last meeting in this chamber back in June, the state budget bill, which is known as House Bill 64, was signed into law by the governor. And in summary, I am very disappointed with the final result of the state budget. With a stroke of a pen, the governor used his line item veto authority and erased close to $1 million, almost $1 million from our school district's budget that will be reduced in 2017. The previous House and Senate versions of the budget bill had maintained funding at current levels for the next 2 years, and a financial cliff is something that I'll talk about in a few minutes, was looming in 2018, even with that budget bill as it was. However, the governor's actions have moved that funding deficit up a year to 2017. So I'd like to provide a summary of events that take us to that. Back in February, the legislation, again known as House Bill 64, was introduced in the State House. And this legislation represents the main operating budget for the state of Ohio for fiscal year 2016-17. With the originally proposed bill, our district was projected to see a reduction in funds of over $1 million. Then in mid-April, after a couple months of debate in the State House, a substitute bill was proposed in House committee, and that particular version was even worse for our district. And our district was scheduled to see a reduction of over $1.4 million in those 2 years. Very active contact with legislators across the state occurred, including action from our board and our administration, our superintendent as well. And there was a flurry of amendments that were proposed in committee when the bill was being considered. And a week later, there was an amended House bill that was passed, which contained a hold harmless provision. The hold harmless provision was designed to ensure that school districts would not receive less than the 2015 funding level, specifically with regard to the TPP reimbursement. As a reminder, a significant source of revenue to school districts had been the Tangible Personal Property Tax, or TPP, and back in 2006, that TPP tax revenue was worth approximately $9.8 million to the Twinsburg School District, or almost 25% of our revenue. However, in 2006, when House Bill 66 took effect, it was scheduled to eliminate the TPP tax, and it replaced it with a state-controlled tax known as the Commercial Activities Tax, or CAT tax for short. Although the state has provided some reimbursement for the lost TPP tax, the intention of that legislation was to eventually eliminate all of the tax revenue that was originally derived from the TPP tax. Ultimately, what they have done, the state has replaced the TPP tax, a local TPP tax, with the state-controlled CAT tax, and through this process, redirected funds away from local school districts and into the state's general fund. Because of House Bill 66, our district has lost approximately $3.6 million that had been previously generated by this TPP revenue. Expense control measures and the 2012 operational change plan, which included a new levy that was supported by the voters of this district, were financial activities that we pursued as a response to these losses and stabilized the financial status of this district. However, if the state continues to phase out the TPP reimbursement, our district stands to lose the remaining $6 million. In June, the state budget bill was forwarded on to the state Senate, where more changes were considered, and after much wrangling, the budget bill went to a House-Senate conference committee to resolve the differences before the final version of the bill was approved by both the State House and Senate and forwarded to the governor for authorization. The version of the bill that went to the governor maintained the hold harmless provision for 2 years, which would have maintained state funding and TPP reimbursement funds at the current levels through the 2016-2017 fiscal years. It's important to recognize that that hold harmless provision was designed to be in effect only for those next 2 years. Thus, it was only a temporary fix for the TPP reimbursement. The hold harmless provision, in fact, still contains a phase out of the TPP under the hood. And what that means is that in 2018, school districts that were affected by the TPP phase out would face a financial cliff. So to restate what the hold harmless provision would do, the TPP reimbursement is still worth approximately $6 million to our district, and the new budget bill is still phasing out the reimbursement of those funds. What the hold harmless provision does is augment that TPP reimbursement with something that's called the supplemental TPP guarantee. To simplify it, it's simply a reimbursement for the reimbursement. And since the supplemental TPP guarantee is only for this state budget for the next 2 years, the TPP phase-out would kick in during 2018 at a level that would include dollars that were already phased out, and thus a financial cliff would occur in 2018. However, to make matters worse, when the state budget bill was sent to the governor for his signature, he used his authority to veto specific provisions in the bill, and with the stroke of a pen, the governor erased close to $1 million of funding to our school district that was scheduled to be here in 2017. The previous House and Senate version of the budget bill had maintained funding at the current levels for 2 years, with that fiscal cliff looming in 2018. However, the governor's action moves that funding deficit up 1 year to 2017. Our district will continue to discuss this issue with our state representatives, as this funding issue must be resolved. We must also begin to look forward at the possibility of expense reduction measures that may be needed during the coming years. While this district currently has a healthy cash reserve, it will be depleted quickly as a result of the funding reductions by the state. And if this cannot be resolved through our legislators, we will need to review the possibility of another operational change plan similar to the one that was implemented just a few years ago. The bottom line is if this TPP phase-out issue is not resolved during the next 2 years, before the next state budget, many districts across the state, including ours, will be faced with very serious decisions that will include reductions in staff and programs. We've had many meetings during the past year with our representatives in the State House and Senate regarding education, testing, and school funding. And I want to highlight that our superintendent has been a very active voice in Columbus with the legislators regarding these important topics, and I'm very glad that we have a voice at the table. But our lobbying efforts are not over, and we must continue to actively voice our concerns to our representatives in Columbus. If we as a community value the level of the quality education that we are providing to our students today, we must address the funding issue with the legislators in Columbus. Otherwise, our choices will include additional local funding or a reduction in educational services and programs. I do not intend for this message to serve as a panic alarm today, but rather as a proactive warning of what may lie ahead in the coming years. And if we are not active together with our state legislators, these decisions will creep up on us faster than you think. And now, to continue with tonight's agenda, and I know that's kind of a heavy note to do this, but I will turn to Mrs. Powers for the superintendent's report. And I know, Mrs. Powers, you also had some comments about the state budget, so I'll turn things to you and let you go from there.
Wow, Mr. Stuver, I'm not sure I can follow that up as well and eloquently as you did, but we're going to try here. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, community members. It seems like a long time since we've been here because our last board meeting was over at the Government Center because we were off schedule. So thanks to the mayor, as always, her hospitality is much appreciated. It has been a very busy summer. As Mr. Stuver indicated, there are a lot of summer projects happening all around the district, and we try to keep everybody posted on our website or through my tweets I send out. So look for those to come out as we progress through some really great and exciting projects here in the district. But I do want to say that Sunday was an exceptionally exciting day for Great Expectations. Board of Education, Great Expectations was invited, they were selected nationally to open Show Choir Camps of America at Heidelberg College in Tiffin, Ohio. It's a tremendous honor for our Great Expectations to be invited to do that, and when Mr. Lanou called me about it initially, it was sort of under wraps. They weren't publicizing it, and then it kind of all happened pretty quickly. And so congratulations to our students and to Mr. Lanou and Dr. Hamler and our Twinsburg Vocal Music Boosters. They continue to put us on the map, and they continue to make us really proud. So congratulations to GE. Over at the Board of Education, Mrs. McKinney is extremely busy with all of her summer recruiting and summer hiring and meeting lots of people and vetting out the very best for our kids. So kudos to Mrs. McKinney and her efforts to find the very best educators and classified staff members for our district. It's very busy over on Ravenna Road right now. Also busy is the fact that next week our summer reading camp kicks off. So thanks to Mrs. Farthing and Mrs. Traphagen, we have our summer reading camp for some of our elementary students who need the extra boost with some literacy skills. So thanks to the support of the Board of Education and some grant monies, we're able to bring the summer reading program again to Bissell Elementary beginning next week. And thanks, Jen and Denise, for working behind the scenes to identify kids and then find the staffing to make it happen, and then we're kicking it off pretty soon. I just want to kudos again to Mr. Stuver's comments about the Cost of Freedom tribute. I've said this multiple times since Independence Day weekend. You had to be there to experience that event. You can't even describe just how fabulous it was. And Commander Joe Jasny and VFW Post 4929 and a whole bunch of community members from all three of our towns just got together, and we were honored to host it at the high school. And I tweeted on the last day, and it was almost a miracle, I say it is, as the flag came down and we were starting to disband and take down the event, a bald eagle flew across the parking lot at Twinsburg High School. I mean, you had to be there. It was just absolutely phenomenal, just the feeling to be there and see that happen. So it was meant to be. I say it was a miracle, and I'll tell you, what an event. And I want to, again, send kudos out to our fabulous art teachers. You know, our kids had a patriotic art display in the Commons area, and the many, many, many people that stopped me and said how that affected them, our kids' interpretation of patriotism and what it means to be an American. And so many people wanted to buy our kids' artwork because it meant so much to them, or take it home or whatever. So Cheryl's here tonight, Cheryl Wilner's here tonight, and Cheryl, thank you for displaying some of our great artwork, and kudos to the rest of the art department. They were all there. We set it up the Thursday before the event, no, Tuesday before the event, and then took it down that Sunday, but just phenomenal. So we have captured some pictures on the Twitter account. And I know that our high school senior, Logan Pawowski, did a fabulous video, which is on my Twitter account, which you can access through my superintendent's message on the district website. And then Channel 9 has a fabulous hour presentation about the event. And I know that they're posting it on Cable 9. So, and the city has a copy of it on their website, and we're going to post it on ours as well. So again, just had to be there and experience it. It was a really phenomenal weekend. Speaking of phenomenal weekends, excuse me, coming on July 20th, which is actually coming next week, again, all three of our towns are banding together to participate in Fill a Bag, Feed a Family. You know that thanks to the Emergency Assistance Center, our schools at Wilcox and Bissell have students who participate in our Pause on Child Hunger program. Well, because of our partnership with the Emergency Assistance Center, we're very delighted to once again partner with them. This is a community event in all three of our towns, and on July 20th, a whole bunch of community volunteers will be delivering to your front door a blue shopping bag that's rolled up with a poster in it, and we all met at St. Cosmas and Damien about 2 weekends ago on a Sunday and had over 100 volunteers rolling bags. They're going to come to your front door. We're asking our residents to please fill the bag with groceries or with personal hygiene products, which will then be picked up on July 25th by more community volunteers. So, you know, it's all about taking care of the people that live in our community. A lot of folks are hurting, a lot of folks are struggling. And so if you're able to help by filling a bag, putting it back on your front porch on July 25th, I know our Twinsburg Tiger football team is one of the many athletic groups that will be out collecting on the 25th. Many of our kids are going to help, many of our staff members, many residents. So thanks to Joyce Hunt at the Emergency Assistance Center, and thanks to the leadership across all 3 of our towns, taking care of our own, that's what it's all about. So we look forward to participating in that beginning next week on Monday, July 20th. Board of Education, I'm going to try to get through the rest of my notes here, and I'm going to read it right from here. I'm just losing my voice. I apologize for that, but I do want to put into record my thoughts about the budget bill. You know, we've worked really hard, and I really do have the most highest degree of appreciation for the members of our community that met with state representatives, that called, that wrote letters, that picked up postcards, that tried to impress upon our state legislators that we have to take care of our Twinsburg kids, and we have to do right by our school community. So if you were part of that effort, thank you very much. And according to what we have learned, not the best news from Columbus, so I wanted to just share my thoughts about both the budget and also the state assessment piece that still weighs heavily on us here in Ohio, and some efforts that kicked off again today that Mrs. Farthing and I are involved in with regard to the state assessment piece. So I'm going to try to get through this. With regard to the state's budget bill, I was extremely disappointed to see that Governor Kasich vetoed half of the budget provision, holding school districts like the Twinsburg City School District harmless for the state's commitment to phase out tangible personal property tax funding. Although we will receive the same level of TPP funding for fiscal year 16 as we received in fiscal year 15, the Twinsburg City School District will step off the fiscal cliff next summer when our TPP losses will begin without replacement. I appreciate the attempts made in both the House of Representatives as well as in the Ohio Senate to craft a permanent TPP solution. However, these attempts were line vetoed by Governor Kasich. I'm concerned that Governor Kasich ignored the fact that our residents and local businesses have done their part in supporting our school district and has, by the stroke of a pen, determined that the district should solely rely on our residents and local business owners to support additional residential and commercial property taxes to backfill what will be taken away in the TPP reimbursement funding. I will be collaborating with superintendents from other TPP-reliant school districts across the state to craft a permanent solution to the TPP issue that can hopefully gain a sufficient majority in both the House and the Senate to guarantee a veto override if one should occur. We have just 1 year to impact change through the legislative process and the mid-year budget review process. I will be once again asking our parents and community members to join me, along with local business owners, in a grassroots effort to convince our state legislators to fix the TPP funding issue in a way that is fair and not detrimental to the Twinsburg City School District, our homeowners, and local business owners. Also, in regard to the budget bill, the testing provisions in the budget have clarified some, but not all of the issues that educators have been discussing over the past several months. Both the Senate and the House versions of the budget prohibited PARCC from being used as the state assessment, a fate ensured by PARCC itself when they failed to offer meaningful reductions in test time after being given a specific opportunity to do so. The budget changes did not specify what vendor to use, but instead gave the authority to make the decision to the Ohio Department of Education, PARCC's most persistent champion. However, given that the testing company, the American Institute for Research, also known as AIR, already has a default agreement with the state in the event that PARCC was rejected, AIR will provide all 4 state assessments in school year 2015-16. Here's a summary of the other testing provisions in the budget. The English Language Arts test for 3rd graders needs to be administered only once. The General Revenue Funds, also called the GRF, appropriations may not be used to purchase PARCC assessments. The budget bill requires state tests will be administered once each year in the second half of the year. Testing time must be reduced to provide more classroom instruction and less disruption. The state superintendent will contract only with vendors that can meet established restrictions. The state vendor must return individual student scores within 45 days of the test administration. In the case of the 3rd grade reading test, the vendors must return scores in 45 days, but no later than June 15th. Previously required grade 1 through 3 diagnostic assessments are permitted but no longer required, and all districts must report the number of opt-outs for school year 14-15. So although the state is making some progress, Board of Education, many of these items actually cause more question marks than not. And so in our conversation this afternoon, Jen Farthing and I had a pretty good discussion with superintendents from around the state, curriculum directors from around the state, and our friends at the Alliance to try to once again put together a document that we're going to be presenting to the state legislators to try to craft a proposal seeking further clarification. You know, our school district was, like all other Ohio school districts last year, it was so much stress on the students first and foremost, so much stress on the teachers. All of this drama about confusion, not knowing how these tests were going to look, worrying about technology. Marty often says school districts are like the Titanic, I think, or another ship. And it takes forever to turn them, and when you're asking a school district to go through these many changes in this amount of time with such pressure put on students first and foremost and then staff, it's not a good situation. And I'm fearful that how this budget bill has been written with regard to state assessment isn't really fixing it as much as it needs to be done. And so we'll continue the work. As I said, we started today, and next Wednesday I'm back in Columbus again for another meeting. So the work will continue, and we just need to work together. I know the teachers did a great job of working with us last year. Superintendents across the state, parents were involved in the conversation. We just need to continue that effort. So hopefully we can get more definition to all of this. So that's all I have as far as the state news. Thankfully my voice held out and I was able to finish that. Now to the good news. Board of Education, you know that we have such supportive community members and such supportive businesses. Well, this evening, on our board agenda, you'll see that we have a number of donations, but we have a tremendous donation this evening to present to you from PPG Industries. And more importantly than that, from one of our parents and our residents, Mrs. Erica Albert. To present this wonderful news, I'm going to ask Jen Farthing to come forward and to give us an overview about this wonderful donation and what it means to our students. Welcome, Jen.
Good evening, Board of Education. It is with great pleasure I am here. Lori Slattery has been very involved as our curriculum supervisor in writing these grants with Mrs. Albert. Obviously, Mrs. Slattery is on vacation for a few weeks, so I'm filling in this evening. Previously, we have approved 2 donations in the $1,000 grants, and then this evening we're approving another $1,000 grant from PPG. All of our grants are focused on the STEM initiative that we are focusing on here in the district, and they are right now earmarked for RBC. And the first thing we will be purchasing, we have the ability to add 3 Lego Mindstorm kits to the robotics club at RBC. As you know, that has really started out as just a volunteer basis. We're hoping that we can make it more than just a voluntary program, but the students have really enjoyed that. They picked right up on it, and it has grown a lot, so we would like to be able to add 3 more kits for the students to use. And then we have also approved the pre-engineering course, and Mr. Schmock will be teaching the pre-engineering course at RBC this school year. And we, in the description, it said automation trainer, and what it is the grants are allowing us to purchase engineering construction kits that come with 450 parts, which I would not want at my house, thank you. But they include sensors and motors and control units that the students will create, and then they allow the program to test it out, and then on the computer it will show the students what that machine can do. So this grant is allowing us to purchase 2 of those that our students will be able to use. So I would just like to say thank you very much to Mrs. Albert and PPG. And Mrs. Albert has a check we can't cash this evening here to present to the Board of Education. So if you could step down.
Yes, PPG would like to say thank you and congratulations. We have funds that are available for the community. It is our opportunity this year to try to present the most grants in our community. And all you have to do is tell me you have something and I will work to get it for you. So I've been working with RBC and with everyone who's been helping to try to create and put these grants together. Not very hard, but you know, you talk about the budget being cut. Any way we can help to be able to soften that a little bit, we'll be able to do that. So again, please continue to stay connected, and I'll make sure that we continue to bring more grants and money for our kids, because I have kids in this community also. So thank you again for inviting me here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. You have to love that attitude. And I think we need to make sure she's on our speed dial, right?
Got it done. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Powers, and thank you again, Mrs. Elpert, for not only the donation, but for coming tonight and taking the time out to be with us. So, next on the agenda are committee reports. I know we have at least the buildings and grounds, so I'm going to go to my left and let Kathy go first, and then we'll see if you guys have anything. So,
Okay. Last night we had a Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. A lot of things covered. Primarily, we're looking at making some improvements at several of our schools. One of the biggest projects that we're looking at is the boilers over at Bissell and Wilcox. Time to do it. We did have CCG come in, and they gave us quite a bit of information on what we can do and how we can do it. And one of the good things is a year ago we had this discussion, and over the past year we've been able to make some changes, and we're going to be doing some control panel things as well. So we do have backup boilers at both schools, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. Right now we don't have that, so if one of the boilers were to go down, we would be in a situation, not a complete situation, because there are two boilers, but two different parts. But it's important that, as Kathy has always said, we want to keep our children warm, safe, and dry, and this is just one of those things that has needed to be done. So I'm glad we're moving forward with that. Parking lots, you can see we've been doing quite a bit of work throughout the school district. One of the things, I don't have a child at Wilcox anymore, but I will tell you that I believe a lot of the parents will be very happy that that driveway is going to be widened. Sidewalk work over there. So a lot of just really doing things that have probably needed to be done for a while. And Chad has done a great job of really providing some, different ways of looking into how we can do that. And like I said, one of the biggest things was I was really impressed with the widening of Wilcox. Over at RBC, they put in the parking lot. We had some sub-ground issues that were addressed and taken care of. So that parking lot is in place. We've talked about the turf a million times, but still have to talk about it. It's amazing. My son's on the football team. The kids are very excited. I've been up there a few times. I've seen soccer players on it. It's just such a nice asset for our community to have, not just for our kids in the school district, but I do know that our NTYF uses it, our soccer programs use it, some of our adult soccer leagues. So it's a part of the community that we just really, really use, and I think it's important that, I just wanted to mention how glad I am that we were able to do that. And then, Chad, could you talk about the impact? The
GMAX test?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the GMAX. I was impressed with where we were at and where we're at now.
Yeah, so our GMAX rating for our field was previously in around the 150 to 160 range, and we reduced our GMAX rating down to 80. What that really means is that the field is significantly softer, so it can withstand the impact of a child hitting the field a lot better, and we've already had the kids and the coaches make comments about the improved GMAX rating or the softness of the field.
Right, like I said, and that gets back to safety. It was time for the field to be replaced. We had it, it was used tremendously, and this was the right time to do it, so thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the number even much below what was acceptable? Like what they
Yeah.
consider acceptable?
Yeah, yeah.
And the NFL is higher.
Yeah.
Correct, correct. So, yeah, we really wanted to place a high emphasis on student safety, and so that's one of the reasons we went with this vendor, was that they had one of the best safety records.
Very good, thank you. Also, we talked about, the radios, communication for our officers within the building. Mr. Walker's done a great job. He did get some grant money. We were able to install, or are in the process of installing, some new devices so that we have exceptional coverage, and that our kids, while they're in school, they are protected 100%, so that, our resource officer can have communications to the people that he needs to. So very glad that that was another thing that was taken care of. I think that's it for buildings, and I'm just going to kind of touch on athletics, if that's okay. Very exciting. We've got, obviously the new field. We did hire a new athletic director, and that is Brian Fantone. He is a Twinsburg boy, and I shouldn't say boy, but Twinsburg graduate. Had the opportunity to see him grow up in the community, so very excited that he, is a part of Twinsburg Tigers now, and at a much different level, and I know he's just ecstatic to be on board. I was at a athletic booster meeting the other evening, and his enthusiasm, and he just radiates positivity, so very excited to have him on board. The football team, they did go out to John Carroll. There were 49 boys that went out for 4 days. The coach said that the kids learned a lot. They're looking good, very good attitude. Very excited for that as well. And I know some of the girls' basketball, they went out of town for a camp. So a lot of the teams are doing prep work for the upcoming season. So very excited that our coaches are really engaging with the kids and getting them ready for our next upcoming school year. And my final thing is, for Twinsburg Athletic Boosters, we do have the Hall of Fame wall, which is going to be constructed with bricks. There is an opportunity to purchase a brick. If you are an athletic booster member, it's $100. If you are not, it's $125. The brick has up to 3 lines, and it can have an engraving of your name, or whatever you would want in there, if you were a graduate of the school, or if you're a teacher, or whatever you want to put on that brick. And if you want information on that, you can contact Tim Kane, or you can go onto the Twinsburg Athletic webpage. And they are going to be closing those sales fairly soon. So if you are interested in that, I would encourage you to do that sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anything from this side of the table?
No, not today.
No, we have
Okay.
not.
All right, thank you. Moving on in the agenda, then, we'll move to item H in our agenda, that's remonstrance. This is a time when members of the community have an opportunity to address the board. Just a reminder that comments should be limited to 5 minutes, and the total time for public participation is a total of 30 minutes. We do have one blue card tonight. Mr. Deersing is here, so Mr. Deersing, I would like to give you the opportunity to address the board. I know your topic is school funding, so topic that we've talked about at nauseum here tonight. We're going to hear a little more, so the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Ray Deersing, 3500 Cannon Road. Last night I was over at the city council meeting, and I felt it very important that I come and share some of what I said over there last night. Our schools are looking, this is before I read the bulletin today. Our schools are looking at additional major losses of school funding with the new state budget that is coming, millions of dollars. A trend by the state to shift the tax burden back to the local communities. We have already seen a need for a new tax levy and implementation of student fees and play fees from previous state reductions. Not only are we looking at that problem, the school board is looking at building a new school building or adding to existing buildings. And who's gonna pay? We are. In 1995, we were facing many of the same problems. The concern about residential growth and the school's needs for a new building was a concern of Mayor Karabek when he proposed buying a property across the street from the City Hall for a school. Superintendent Miller at the time said it is rare for a city government to show that much concern for a school district. Councilman Ray Ganowski said, "This is a vision we've had since the first comprehensive plan 5 years ago." Councilman John Rock said, "We bought the land to stop the growth in the city." He said adding 85 homes were planned for the plot now earmarked for the school. On the council agenda, they had a number of ordinances to rezone property from commercial to R5 cluster homes up on Aurora and Chamberlain Roads. The developer withdrew one request, so there's only going to be one on the ballot for 10 acres that will allow 35 cluster homes. This land has been zoned industrial prior for many years. Some of the reasons that have been given for supporting these cluster homes are that we are running out of residential land. My question was, why do we need more residential land? Why do we have to increase the density to bring more people into our city? Another reason given, it could possibly generate $38,000 for the schools. The Whispering Woods cluster home development generates about $2,200 per year per home per schools. Our cost per pupil for our schools is $10,000 per student, and I was corrected, it's $11,000 there in that neighborhood. My question, and I did not get an answer, was why are these parcels that are zoned industrial or commercial within the city being taxed at the lower residential rate at the expense of our schools, which is about 5 mils? The city's zoning request, they want to rezone the 20 acres of land up on Glenwood, on the corner of Glenwood and 91. There are reasons there is a need for cluster homes. Yes, there is a need for residential and cluster homes because we have a great city, we have a great school system, but our priorities need to be for the residents who are living here, who pay the bills, not for investors who buy property. And especially, it's disturbing to me that, like I said, we have industrial and commercially zoned properties that are being taxed at the residential rate, which is lower than our industrial and commercial rate. Those are two. I can give you others. Also, in the newspaper, the bulletins, etc., we were told that the city bought the 20 acres of land to prevent commercial development on that parcel. And I said, the residents bought the 900 acres of land known as Liberty Park, and the reason why we voted it was to prevent residential development. So, that and the tax abatement, and you had spoken before about the needs of additions to the school, and you were going to have open forum and everything. My suggestion is, I think it's very important at this stage of the game is that our superintendent, our board president, and our treasurer meet with the mayor, the council president, and treasurer in an open forum to discuss this, how we can work as a city totally. 69% of our taxes go for the support of schools. Our priorities, as far as I'm concerned, is for the residents who live here, not for the people who are going to move in. And to sell, the main reason why they want to sell that 20 acres up there on Glenwood Drive, which is zone plan unit development, and public facilities is they want to use that money to build a new clubhouse and party center. That priority is totally wrong in my mind. Like I said, the city and the school board has to work together in order to keep growing. We cannot continue to pay more taxes to support for the benefit of people who are not living here. And the developer in Whispering Woods, their comments are they want to attract the young families. So that's where I'm coming from. At this point in time, I think it's a travesty, if you will, to sell public land, 20 acres, for the development of cluster homes. Once the land is gone, it's gone forever. And the remaining land in the city becomes more valuable. And no one knows here in this room or in this city what's going to happen 2 years from down the road. We may even see greater cuts from the state. You don't know. We don't know what the economy's going to be. So that's where I'm coming from. And I really, truly hope that you see the wisdom in getting together in a public forum, the 6 of you, and then after that, discuss the pros and cons of what we as a city, which encompasses every entity, schools and the city government, to how we can maintain our great city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Davis.
you.
Okay, next in our agenda tonight, we have action to take this evening, the treasurer's report and recommendations. Before I move to those 3 items, Mr. Aho, do you have anything to report this evening to the board?
No, these are all the typical items that we do every meeting, so like just getting caught up.
Okay. Without objection from my colleague, I will read items I-1, 2, and 3 together, consent agenda. Action item I-1, under the treasurer's report and recommendations, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the following meeting minutes, which is the regular meeting of June 24th, 2015, and the special meeting of July 2nd, 2015, which was sent to the board under separate cover. I-2, that the Board of Education accepts the following financial report for the month of May 2015, bank reconciliation, general fund financial summary report, and the financial report by fund, which was sent to the board under separate cover. And finally, I-3, that the Board of Education accepts the check register for the month of May 2015. The total, including payroll, is $5,269,544.72. Is there a motion for these 3 agenda items, please?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis, a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Felber. Any discussion on these 3 items? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Turl Waldron,
Yes.
Mr. Stuver.
Yes. And those 3 items pass 4-0. Next, under action items for personnel, I would like to read together the the only 3 items under this section, consent agenda. Item J1, that the Board of Education accepts the certificated licensed personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit J1 as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified, pending satisfactory ORC background checks. J2, that the Board of Education accepts the classified personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified, pending satisfactory ORC background checks. This is in Exhibit J2. And item J3, that the Board of Education accepts the supplemental contract recommendations detailed in the attached Exhibit J3 as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified, pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Is there a motion for these 3 agenda items, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Felber, a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Any discussion on these 3 items? Roll call, please.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Turl Waldron,
Yes.
Mr. Stuver.
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. We now have items under new business. There's a total under agenda item K of 16 items that I would like to read together in consent agenda without objection from my colleagues. Action item K1, that the Board of Education accepts a donation of $150 from Target, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Target the company, for the response to intervention math supplies for Wilcox Primary School. This is found in Exhibit K1. K2, that the Board of Education accepts a donation of $50 from Progressive Insurance Foundation of Cleveland, Ohio, for the staff appreciation at Wilcox Primary School, per attached Exhibit K2. Item K3, that the Board of Education accepts a donation of $1,000 to purchase an automation trainer for the engineering class at R.B. Chamberlain. This is from PPG Industries of Cleveland, Ohio, found in Exhibit K3. Item K4, that the Board of Education accepts a donation of a river birch tree from the Twinsburg Garden Club to be planted at the Twinsburg High School. The value of the tree is approximately $100. This donation is found in Exhibit K4. Action item K5, that the Board of Education approves the settlement agreement, release and waiver for special education services for one student provided at Monarch Center for Autism for the 2015-2016 school year in the amount not to exceed $45,000. This is a general fund expense and was sent to the board under separate cover. Item K6, that the Board of Education approves an agreement for ABA training for 10-plus staff members with Solutions Behavioral Consulting for the period of July 20th, 2015 through July 27th, 2015. The fee for the ABA training is $2,450. This is a Title VI-B expense as sent to the board under separate cover. K7, that the Board of Education approves a student service agreement access with re-education services for 2 students with disabilities for the 2015-2016 school year. Both students will be attending the Re-Ed Access program at $257 per day, not to exceed 182 days. The total, $46,774 per student, and this is sent to the board under separate cover and is a general fund expense. Item K8, the Board of Education approves an agreement between the Board of Education and Sendero Therapies for the 2015-16 school year. The agreement will provide occupational therapy in accordance with the Individual with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, or IDEA, and its implementing regulations and the State of Ohio's Education of Children with Disabilities Act. This agreement was sent to the board under separate cover and is a general fund expense. K9, that the Board of Education approves a contract with the Cuyahoga County Educational Service Center Positive Education Program for the 2015-2016 school year for one student at the daily rate of $291. This is for 185 days for a total of $53,835. Tuition is paid by the general fund. However, the tuition will be back billed on the SF-14H and SF-6. This was sent to the board under separate cover. K10, that the Board of Education approves a contract with Solutions Behavioral Consulting for the 2015 ESY services at a cost of $1,450 for student number 1 and $795 for student number 2. Additional hours will be billed at $150 per hour for consulting and $45 per hour for tutoring. This is a 6B fund expense and was sent to the board under separate cover. K11, that the Board of Education approves a 5-year contract with Liniform Linen and Uniform Service of Barberton, Ohio for custodial supplies, mats, uniforms, as per the terms and conditions that were sent to the board under separate cover. Item K12, that the Board of Education accepts a donation from Mrs. Pamela Burkhart of North Canton, Ohio, of an equipment trailer for the Twinsburg Vocal Music Boosters. The value of the trailer is $12,087. The donation was previously approved on April 1st, 2015, and we are simply highlighting that this actually comes from Mrs. Pamela Burkhart, so thank you to her. K13, resolved that the Board of Education approves and adopts the ASL, which is American Sign Language, course of study. The adoption was approved at the Curriculum and Technology meeting held on June 22nd, 2015. Item K14, that the Board of Education approves and adopts the Senior Seminar Course of Study. The adoption was approved at the Curriculum and Technology meeting on June 22nd, 2015. K-15, that the Board of Education approves and adopts the fitness and nutrition for today's athlete, new physical education course of study. The adoption of this was approved at the Curriculum and Technology meeting held on June 22nd, 2015. And finally, K-16, that the Board of Education adopts and purchases the Apex Learning online curriculum. The adoption was also approved at the Curriculum and Technology meeting held on June 22, 2015. Is there a motion for these 16 agenda items?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis. A second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Felber. I think, Mrs. Powers, I would like to ask you, just for the sake of those who are unfamiliar with this, we have several agreements here that we are considering tonight, most of which are related to children with special needs and the contracts that are required so that we can, by law, provide them with the appropriate educational services. So I'd like to ask you to just provide a few more comments on that.
Sure. K-5 is an agreement with Monarch School, and then you see an agreement with Re-Ed Access, which is K-7. Also, the agreement with Carroll County Educational Service Center, K-9. Those three agreements provide opportunities for students with disabilities to be placed out in facilities where we don't have the capacity to deal with very complex issues here in our school district. So those are being driven by the fact that these students all have individual education plans, and that's the least restrictive environment for them. All three of these organizations provide excellent care of the children, and obviously before we get to this point, there have been multiple meetings with our parents and our staff members led by Mrs. Trapp-Bagan and her staff. And so these agreements are all for the 15-16 school year. Between now and the beginning of the school year, Board of Education, you'll be seeing multiple different kinds of agreements coming your way. This is the first of, I'm sure, many more to come before the first day of school. Solutions Behavior is an organization that we have come to rely on. They are trained psychologists and psychiatrists and consultants that come in and help us understand how to manage certain student behavior. And so the agreement on K-6 provides a consultant to come in and help our staff hone some skills that they need to be able to manage some student issues. So that's what that one is. And then K-8 is our contract with Sendero. That's the organization through which we get our occupational therapy teachers. And again, these folks work with our students with disabilities. So very important to have that in place before the first day of the school year.
Thank you for that. I don't know if our curriculum committee folks, or anybody has any comments about the courses of study that we're approving tonight?
Not anything, we went over a little bit in the last meeting, so I don't have my notes with me, but a lot of good things being recommended or up for approval, and I think some of the senior athletics or athletes will be real excited about the fitness and nutrition for today's athlete course, because it'll work. This course will also help with the coaches working with the students too for just general fitness, strength training, and I think there's going to be a good number of students who are going to take advantage of that course.
I'll be very interested to follow the success and progress of the sign language course.
Yeah.
I have seen and heard of a lot of interest in that, not only in our district, but even in colleges where students are beginning to take that as a course of study. So I'll be very interested to see how that turns out this year.
And interestingly enough, Mr. Stuver, that is considered a world language. So students who are working on their honors diploma could take this as one of the requirements. And,
I have a suspicion it's going to be well attended.
it will be. What we have seen in our conversations with other school districts, they start small and the interest grows, and pretty soon these become full-time positions because there's a great interest on the part of the kids to take this kind of course.
Very interesting, thank you. Any other comments? Roll call, please, Mr. Aho.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Turl Waldron,
Yes.
Mr. Stuver.
Yes. And those 16 items pass 4-0. Moving on, still under agenda item K, we have 6 more items, which are items K-17 through 22. I would like to read together in consent agenda without objection from my colleagues. Item K-17, that the Board of Education approves change orders from Perrin Asphalt and Concrete of Akron, Ohio for paving at Wilcox Primary School at a cost not to exceed $6,109.95. Change orders number 2 and 3 address drainage items at the Wilcox School, including the raising of the fire hydrant and replacing a catch basin. This is a permanent improvement expenditure. Item K18, that the Board of Education approves the boiler and control projects at Bissell Elementary and Wilcox Primary School with CCG Automation of Richfield, Ohio, through a state term schedule contract in the amount of $398,610. This is a permanent improvement expenditure. Item K19, that the Board of Education approves the purchase of one 2016 Ford plow truck through an Ohio Schools Council bid at a cost of $31,400. This plow truck will be purchased from Valley Ford Truck in Cleveland, Ohio, and the plow truck will be paid for with permanent improvement funds. K20, that the Board of Education approves the purchase of two 2016 Ford Transit passenger vans through the Ohio Schools Council bid at a cost of $27,056.50 for each van, totaling $54,113. These vans will be purchased from Ganley Ford of Norton, Ohio, and the vans will be paid for with the permanent improvement funds. K21, that the Board of Education adopts and purchases Music for Sight Singing, the 9th edition by Nancy Rogers and Robert Ottman, supplemental classroom resource for the AP Music Theory. The adoption was approved by the District Curriculum and Technology Committee on June 22nd, 2015, and this is a permanent improvement expenditure. And finally, item K22, that the Board of Education adopts and purchases the Theory Essentials by Connie E. Mayfield for the AP Music Theory. This is, adoption was approved by the District's Curriculum and Technology Committee at their meeting on June 22nd, 2015, and this is also a permanent improvement expenditure. Is there a motion for these agenda items, please?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Turl Waldron, a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Just to note that the big ticket item here under K18 is the consideration for this agreement to move forward with CCG Automation. Ms. Turl Waldron spoke of this earlier. This is a boiler project at 2 of our schools. It was actually discussed last year, and then we had a hang-up with what was at that time called the MMA program at the state level, and we weren't able to get this project approved so that we could expend these funds in this manner, in this program. Fortunately, Mr. Brian Wagner of CCG Automation stayed on top of that process, stayed on top of the folks at the state level. The MMA program is now called the State Term Schedule, if I get that right, Mr. Welker. And we now have the ability to move forward with this project. I know this is something that our maintenance folks and Mrs. Powers and Mr. Welker were a little nervous about getting through last winter, so we're very happy that we're moving forward with this. And as Kathy has already mentioned, what this will do is replace either old or non-operational boilers in our buildings at Wilcox and Bissell, and then the boilers that are still there that are working will become backup. So we'll have 2 brand new boilers that we can feel comfortable, will operate, keep our children warm, safe, and dry in these 2 buildings, and then there will be backup capacity in those buildings that currently does not exist. So it's an item that has been in our plans. It's part of our forecast. We were projecting to spend this money, so it's $398,610. It is a big ticket item, but it is absolutely something that is appropriate for an expenditure out of our PI funds. So any other discussion or comments on any of these other items? Did I get that right, Mr. Welker?
Yes, you did.
Did I do all right?
Yep, you did good.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Turl Waldron,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mr. Stuver.
Yes. And those items pass 4-0. I would like to ask, I'm going to actually move miscellaneous up here and just ask, before we move to executive session, do I have any discussion points from my colleagues or administrators tonight? I think you had a point.
I just wanted to reiterate some tremendous thanks for the schools, for the Cost of Freedom. I was on the steering committee. Absolutely right. It was an amazing event. I'm not sure the Bald Eagle was scheduled, but that was kind of after 4 days of 24 hours a day being exhausted. But I just want the community to know that these 2 folks to my right, Superintendent Powers and Chad Walker were there practically the entire time. There wasn't a request that wasn't planned for that, or unplanned, that they didn't say, yes, we can look into it. And it turned out to be a very, very hot weekend. I think the only time we didn't have rain all year. And it was either people passing out and distributing water or moving some ceremonies into the schools. The schools were already open for the art exhibit, which was absolutely amazing. I know some of the museum operators were looking at trying to get some of the art for their actual traveling museum. So Twinsburg saw 16,000 plus folks come in a 4-day period. But they were on spot the whole time, from the time that we were setting it up till turned it down on Sunday. So thank you for being there, as exhausting as it was. Driving the golf carts and doing whatever needed to be done to get all those people where they needed to be. So thank you.
Anything else?
No, I just want to also say it was an amazing event, and I saw Rob working. The committee was just, the hours that they put in, I believe some of them were there 24 hours and didn't take time off, and it was just, as Mrs. Powers said, an amazing, very moving event. So thank you for everyone that was involved in that, and thank you for, being able to have it here in Twinsburg. It was awesome.
Okay, well, the board does have need to move to an executive session this evening. I will make the motion that the board enters executive session at 8:08 p.m. to discuss the employment of public employees as per Board of Education Policy 0166, paragraph A. Is there a second for this motion? Second by Mr. Felber. Just a note that there will be no further action taken this evening after the executive session by the board. Roll call, please.
Mr. Stuver,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Turl Waldron.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 4-0. The board will now move to executive session. I want to thank those who came tonight for the meeting. Thank you.